Organizations across Colorado did not understand why they lost federal funding last year. Turns out, a computer was making those decisions.
That was very lazy, inconsiderate, and dehumanizing.
Thousands of Xcel customers could be left in the dark tomorrow as the utility tries to prevent wildfires. Lawmakers say when Colorado citizens demand change at the ballot box, it does come at a cost, but predicting those costs is easier said than done. And nearly 500 weeks later, we're still building on our favorite Friday tradition, finding the good news going on across our state.
My good news is that I do not have school today and I'm on spring break.
All that and more tonight on Next. Around this time last year, we were telling you almost nightly about Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency canceling projects all across Colorado and the funding for them. A lot of organizations were shocked to lose that funding and said they were never given a specific reason why. Now, new court documents show a lot of those decisions were made by artificial intelligence. Spencer Soitcher has more.
The time is 10:44, and we're now back on the record.
Have you ever sat in your boss's office as they told you about a decision and thought, man, whose idea was that?
Welcome back, Mr. Kavanaugh.
It was these so-called Doge bros in Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency reviewing millions in federal grants last year. Or actually, it was ChatGPT.
We didn't know who the individuals, the entities were to review and select who was going to get cut.
When Dr. Xochitl Chavez's grant with CU Boulder was pulled last year, it hit hard.
My home, my community. This affects directly Colorado history, Colorado's people.
She'd spent the last 4 years digitally archiving Southern Colorado's unique musical past. They'd spent about 75% of the $150,000 grant. But court filings showed Doge staffers entered a brief summary of Xochitl's federal grant and others into ChatGPT, where it was flagged to be pulled because it promoted diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI.
You could call it a whitewashing. It's also a full-on erasure, limited storytelling of the makeup of our community and our state.
Video depositions showed Doge relied heavily on AI to determine which projects promoted DEI, and that some staffers couldn't even define DEI.
Do you have an understanding as you sit here today of what DEI means?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding of what it means?
Well, it is exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so.
And I don't have the EO in front of me, but that.
The documents show 4 Colorado projects were reviewed for DEI by AI, and 3 were flagged as promoting DEI.
That was very lazy, inconsiderate, and dehumanizing.
Chavez says they were able to finish the project, but only because the people working on it paid out of their own pocket to see it through.
This is where we're losing humanity.
It's important to note here that these AI programs make mistakes too. In fact, I used ChatGPT as I sorted through the thousands of documents here and found it was making mistakes, sometimes not noticing obvious errors or overlooking key details like actual cases that were even listed in this, Jenny.
I think people will debate the merit of a program, right? That's politics. But to debate how you cancel a program, feeding it through ChatGPT, which is what you can use to also build out a menu or whatever else. Like,
yeah, I mean,
is that like the real
right? Like, oh, that's efficiency.
Personal affront almost for these folks.
Well, yeah, and they're using a 2-sentence summary about a project that was submitted I don't know how long ago, and then you're like, oh, ChatGPT, does this have DEI? Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm sure there are cases in there that don't exactly line up that way.
These deposition videos circulating a lot online right now.
Yeah.
People taking them to task for it.
Yeah.
All right, Spencer, thank you. If you were in Boulder or Jefferson County, get your flashlight ready. Charge up your phone tonight because you could lose power tomorrow as Xcel Energy prepares for high winds and fire danger. Xcel says they are likely going to shut off power to as many as 18,000 customers in those counties tomorrow, all due to a fire weather watch. Xcel predicts outages will start around 2 p.m. The utility has carried out a few of these planned outages, all part of its plan to try to prevent wildfires. The rollout's been pretty rocky so far. Local governments have complained about poor communication before the outages and the shutoffs, essential to essential services, and some customers have reported outages lasting for days. Even customers outside of the planned outage areas could wind up in the dark. Xcel is also turning up the sensitivity on some of its power lines, which could trigger an outage if a limb or other debris falls on a line. So now's a good time to bring in Chris Bianchi because the weather tomorrow is no joke. It makes sense why this is a day they're talking about tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll just say that as a meteorologist, I don't really have a great understanding as to which days they're picking. For example, back on Thursday, we had 80, 90 mile an hour winds in a lot of those spots that are potentially looking at shutoffs, while tomorrow, 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. And again, there's certainly high fire danger tomorrow. I don't want to mitigate what we're possibly looking at tomorrow. It's just, I don't see the, honestly, it feels like the goalposts move event to event. That's my understanding of it. Meantime, still pretty gusty for us in the foothills right now. Just not as bad as it was yesterday, but still pretty gusty for us in the foothills. That wind, generally today, an in-between day in terms of that wind. That wind will pick back up tomorrow, and we are going to be talking about widespread 40 to 60 and occasionally 70 mile an hour winds through the day tomorrow. They'll peak tomorrow night as a cold front moves through and that wind continues into Sunday, but fire danger goes down on Sunday because of this. A cold front comes in from the north that'll lead to some snow showers and even some snow squalls. Those are essentially bursts of snow and wind that'll move their way through the mountains tomorrow night. So if you don't have to travel through the mountains between 10 p.m. tomorrow night and 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, I would advise against it. In Denver, we'll get a burst of snow around dawn on Sunday and a sharp temperature drop as well. Could get a slushy dusting to 2 inches of snow in Denver, a bit more than that in the foothills and in the mountains, certainly where we could have a few inches of fresh snow for those skiers on Sunday. And also, we've got a very cold day ahead for us on Sunday as well. We top out in the mid-70s tomorrow, then we drop down to a high of around freezing on Sunday. And then we go right back up again. Historic March heat with temperatures will likely be in the mid to even upper 80s for the mid to end part of next week, which would break all sorts of March temperature records in Denver.
Colorado allows citizens and advocacy groups to bypass the state legislature and put initiatives on the ballot, but that can also put state budget writers in a bind. For example, a recent ballot initiative required the state to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on law enforcement, forcing lawmakers to make cuts elsewhere. Our Marshall Zellinger explains how a bill at the Capitol is now trying to give voters more information next time, even if it's not accurate.
Voters approved funding for police training and bonuses in 2024. Proposition 130 meant lawmakers needed to spend $350 million on law enforcement. Democratic State Representative Cecilia Espinoza believes voters did not realize that $350 million for law enforcement also meant cuts in other parts of the budget.
But what if the majority of the people did know that?
Well, I mean, I think the way to find out is to give them the information, right?
She's sponsoring a bill that would add language to ballot issues like Proposition 130. If a ballot issue required new state spending without providing new funding, voters would be shown the top 3 areas of the state budget that would be cut and approximately how much.
The point is to give the citizens knowledge that there will be cuts if it's asking for an additional state expenditure.
I think there's a place for arguments back and forth. That's the Blue Book.
Michael Fields' conservative advocacy group Advance Colorado put Proposition 130 on the ballot, forcing lawmakers to direct more spending to law enforcement while they were also supposed to cut $1 billion from the state budget. The budget conundrum was kind of spelled out in the 2024 Blue Book. One of the arguments against Prop 130, local communities may anticipate levels of funding that the legislature cannot provide due to limited resources.
The legislature wants to come in, meddle with these citizens' initiatives because they don't like the outcome.
Here's the thing. Budget decisions are in control of the 6 lawmakers who sit on the Joint Budget Committee. So printing on the ballot what might get cut won't be fully accurate.
So really what it comes down to is it ends up being the top 3 things in the budget, which is a lot of times a lie.
The top 3 areas of the state budget are Medicaid, K-12, and higher ed.
As this budget year has demonstrated, we cannot balance a budget without addressing those 3 largest expenditures.
But despite calls to shrink the budget, state spending on those top 3 areas was not cut this year. Medicaid spending, which the state spends the most on, went up this year compared to last, as did K-12 education and higher education. Barely.
Proposition 130 did not bind lawmakers to fund $350 million for law enforcement to any set time period. So, lawmakers passed a bill last year to creatively fund that amount over time, over the next decade, without cuts to Medicaid, K-12, and higher ed. So, if this bill were a law that was already in place in 2024, saying $350 million would be at the expense of those 3 budget areas would not be accurate for what really happened, Jenny.
I would imagine that if something is going to cost money, where do we pull it from? That, if you don't know, there could be a risk there of getting pretty political, right? If you're trying to warn voters about a decision they might make.
Sure, and perhaps that's the thinking of this, that if voters had in front of them, wait a minute, you're going to cut from these 3 areas, whether or not that's fully accurate. Wait, you're going to cut from these 3 areas. I don't want to approve that now. That's the thinking of Michael Fields, like it's another hurdle that the lawmakers are trying to put on the ballot.
I see. Okay. Well, and also if this goes on the ballot, we'll talk about how much longer a ballot's going to get. We're going to have novels.
No kidding. And look, I specialize in this, and the longer it gets, the more emails we're going to get. Like, what is this saying?
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Marshall, thank you. One of the perks of living in Colorado is the abundance of wildlife. This week, we have a chance to protect and nurture creatures big and small. Here's Kyle with an update on this week's Word of Thanks.
Thanks for being with Next while I'm away. Your weekly Word of Thanks micro-giving campaigns have done all kinds of good all over Colorado in the last 300 weeks. This week, a first-of-its-kind campaign to support the wildlife in this beautiful state. Our donations will support 2 wonderful nonprofits that help injured wildlife in Colorado. Greenwood Wildlife Rehabilitation Center is the largest wildlife rehabilitation center on the Front Range. They treat wild birds and small mammals that get injured, usually when their paths cross with humans. Thousands of animals come through each year and they're nursed to health and returned to the wild. Rocky Mountain Raptor Program, based in northern Colorado, saves the lives of eagles, hawks, owls, and other raptors. Hundreds each year when they tangle with vehicles or utility lines or energy operations. Most of those treated raptors are returned to the wild. Some join Rocky Mountain Raptors Conservation Education Program. That reaches tens of thousands of Coloradans to give them an up-close appreciation of our state's wildlife. So every dollar that we raise this week is going to be split 50-50 between those 2 organizations. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491. We'll send you that link to donate. Same link takes you to the Word of Thanks Fund, where more than 7,500 of you have signed up to make a monthly donation. Put in your info one time. Each month, your donations automatically split among all the nonprofits we feature. And lately, that's been adding almost $50,000 for each weekly campaign. I'll see you on Monday.
There are just 2 officers patrolling a 600,000-acre reservation in southern Colorado. Members of Congress say that is not enough, and violence is on the rise. Understanding the ins and outs of the Colorado River can be really hard, and now a new project at CU Boulder is trying to make it a little easier.
It's my spring break. I'm a teacher, so I get to have a week off and be with my family.
And your good news has been stacking up all week. Now it's time to share it. Next. Welcome back. Members of Colorado's congressional delegation are now making a bipartisan push for more federal officers to police the Ute Mountain Ute Reservation in southwestern Colorado. They say the tribe is down to just 1 federal officer and 1 tribal officer. They've recently implemented a nightly curfew during a rise in gun violence. Democratic Senators Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper, along with Republican Congressman Jeff Hurd, say they're pretty concerned about the lack of Bureau of Indian Affairs officers commissioned to police this area, 600,000 acres of reservation. It includes land in Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. In the past, the tribe has had up to 10 BIA officers patrolling the reservation. Now, 1 federal officer and 1 tribal officer are left to drive up to 75 miles between the tribe's police station and the farthest boundaries of the reservation in Utah. The lawmakers say the lack of law enforcement coincides with a rise in violent crime over the past 2 years. A member of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribal Council shared that concern with state lawmakers earlier this year.
We as a tribe have requested added BIA law enforcement to help protect our people, but we have been met with not enough BIA officers or not enough funding. We deserve to give our members and families justice for crimes that are committed on the Ute Mountain Ute lands.
Hurd, Hickenlooper, and Bennett are all asking the Bureau of Indian Affairs to conduct a 90-day analysis of the tribe's law enforcement needs so Congress can determine whether or not to direct more resources to the reservation. Low snowpack and high temps have people across Colorado very worried about water resources. But the state of Colorado River, of the river that is, it's a pretty tricky subject. So now a new program at CU Boulder is dedicating to educating the public.
Most people understand in Colorado and in the West that water is an important issue. At the same time, what I hear is that it feels like impenetrable. My name is Luke Runyon. I'm co-director of the Water Desk. We support journalists and news organizations to tell better stories about water in the Western U.S. Yeah, so I've been with the Water Desk since 2023. And before that, I spent most of my journalism career as a public radio reporter. Just figuring out like what people are talking about when it comes to water can be really challenging. It's got its own set of jargon and legalese. Just looking at the Colorado River Basin, you've got 7 states, you've got 2 countries that rely on it, you've got 30 tribes. Everybody's relationship to water is kind of different, their interests are different. So the Water Desk is a program based at the University of Colorado Boulder in the Center for Environmental Journalism. And really our whole mission is to increase the quantity and quality of water-related journalism in the West. I can fill in as an editor, I could be a project manager, I could pair you up with other resources like multimedia, visualization, data work, those sorts of things. So it was really about adding to the suite of resources that we were able to provide. There's going to be a lot of news coverage around these issues this year, and that's where we can help and make sure that those stories are the best that they can possibly be.
486 weeks later, we still are not tired of your good news. Our favorite Friday tradition is next. Welcome back. Every Friday, we set out to find the good news going across the state. This week, we found it at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. More specifically, at their new exhibit made up of more than 1 million Legos. Our photojournalist Tom Cole's good news, he didn't step on any of them.
We came for the Lego exhibit. I was not kidding. Lego maniacs.
I don't think I could make any of this, but I think it's really creative and it took a while and a lot of effort.
It's incredible. My good news is I got to come to the museum and see all these amazing Lego exhibits with my kid, who's also a Lego maniac.
I do not have school today and I'm on spring break.
My good news is that me and her both are graduating from high school in 2 months.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting because I've been waiting for a long time.
My good news is that I'm getting really good at a game called Helldivers and a game called War Thunder.
My friends and I love buying Lego sets and just building them. It's super fun. My good news is I'm going on a mission trip this summer to Southeast Asia to share Jesus with everybody there, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah, I'm just happy to be with my family. It's my other good news. It's my spring break. I'm a teacher, so I get to have a week off and be with my family, so it's good. My good news is my friends and I just got a new place together, so we're gonna be moving in.
My good news is it's payday.
Glad to hear it. We're back with your feedback next. In your feedback tonight, Bill asks, if tribes are separate nations, why don't they provide their own police? It's a good question. So the federal government is federally mandated to provide public safety on reservations. That's part 1. And part 2, tribal police actually have limited authority over non-tribal members. And so therefore, if a non-tribal member happens to commit a crime on a reservation, there are limitations there. But good question. Thanks, guys, for watching with us tonight. And thanks for having me. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.